Thank you very much thank you for the invitation for us to present. So I heard the number 93% of the hospitals have got their EHR installed. And let's assume that we have great usability on them, they installed. So what is the problem if we can solve to work with vendors? So I'm from Baylor Scott & White, it's a new name for us, system. And apparently it's the largest system, healthcare system in Texas. So in Texas, we're like going big. So that's one of the indications. I'm from the Office of Patient Safety at the Baylor Scott & White, and we are sort of inside the healthcare organization, supposed to say academic developers or something else. So our mission is for patient safety. On the podium with me is Adam Smith, and he's a human factors specialist. So we team up together working on this project. I'm going to turn off the slide for a while so to talk about our experience. So we participate in the SHARP project in probably two sort of major areas. One is working on the safety-enhanced design in terms of website and briefs. Another one is that we developed we call it Baylor EHR User Experience Survey, and which line up very well with what we want to do. In other words, now you have the EHR, so what is the objectives for a healthcare delivery organization to improve usability, user experience? So let's assume we got everything tested. You did a great work to before release and everything tested the way ideally you wanted. The question is there a role for healthcare organization to improve user experience? So let me probably describe a little bit about in terms of our own experience in terms of both the opportunity and the responsibilities using our Baylor healthcare system as an example, and how we should do something to help the users. And we'll show some examples later on. And so in terms of usability, so we're probably all familiar with the three major definitions of usability, which is the system has to be effective and have to be efficient, and of course satisfactory to our users. And so it is very broad. It was something useful, and clearly is not something that just look pretty. So that's clearly a lot of misinterpretation in the front line by our implementation team. So we also believe there's a lot of low-hanging fruits by healthcare organizations to actually improve usability. And so our effort is working on the EHR after go live, not before go live. We try to do all the testing, so after go live in process. So let me start with the two sort of, I think, obvious observation. Healthcare system, anyone lives in a larger dynamic environment. So the regulation can change all the time. So you may have new reimbursement policy. You may have new national patient safety goals. These have tremendous influence on hospital systems, how they want to use their EHR. They may add a new form, add a new button, discontinue another part. So it is continually changing external environment. In other words, it does not matter where you certified up front. Once you put it in place, things have to change. And whose responsibility to change it? The organization themselves. It's difficult to blame on the vendor. They did not have particular module. It's when you bought it, now you have it. And second obvious observation is that user experience is not a static property. So once you got it, you have users who become more experienced or more frustrated. The workflow may change. In other words, because of EHR, you adapt a new workflow. And you have constant new sort of modules brought online. So it's not a static user experience constant. So therefore, the question becomes, do we look for vendors to point to them to say, hey, you give us a bad product? And sometimes they will say, what product? You already customized to your own way, you incorporate in the ways, and there are actually many modules put together that's not ours. So clearly that the dynamic changing both internal and inside would bring the clear responsibility by healthcare organizations. So they have to share some of the burden and both in terms of responsibility and clearly something they have to do because of the opportunity. So let me comment a little bit about position 4 years ago. Baylor signed a contract with then also Eclipses in 2003. So I'm not sure Toby would remember that or not. But 2003, and it took about 4 years for our organization to go from 1 hospital to about 4 facilities. And in 2010 or 11, the implementation really expanded, and very quickly we implemented in all 14 hospitals. So at the beginning, there's very little recognition of anything about workflow issues or usability or user experience at all. And we use the anecdotal feedback system where whoever complained loudest, that's the one we want to address them first. And we use our own, or maybe ad hoc style guides, how to customize order sets and all the screen templates. There's no involvement of human factors specialists. So it's very sort of an ad hoc process. And a 1 wake-up call is that when I was informed that nurses using their scrubs as mouse pad, so like this. I said, well, that cannot be true. I mean, sounds amazing. And we just got involved, say, well, you guys are human factors experts, come here to tell us what's wrong. I think that cannot be the case. I can show you an example how that happened. So Adam and I went over to do a quick inspection. So it turned out it's a lot more than using your scrub as a mouse pad. So on the left-hand side, we noticed a computer behind a patient family couch. So clearly, this is not set up. Just we went there and took the picture. It's difficult to use. Okay, so obvious question, who in their right mind would do something like that? The other side, the right-hand side, is a closet. I'm not sure you can tell. It's a very narrow closet. It has a keyboard tray and a monitor. And that was a computer before. And the width of the cabinet is such that you can put a keyboard, but not a tray. Okay, so you use a mouse, you can use the door or your scrub to control the mouse. And clearly that these kind of inspections, even though I don't think it would take a PhD or anything that with any sophistication to figure out, but just the concept to do an inspection to see how work is actually carried out was new to our organization, just to see how the work is actually carried out. And quite often we implement it with very little forethought, just put it in and let it go. So I think at that time we were involved in the Sharp-C project. We think, how can we make our healthcare system to be more intelligent, to actually understand what they actually put users on? So these inspections have been very helpful. We use visuals to educate our leaders, so they know what sort of a problem that nurses may be encountered. We also look at some of the interface issues, and one of the terms I just learned recently is called clicktronics. So we think anything with a click will be easy, and if you click, that means patient symptoms were documented, procedure were checked, and the orders are issued. And so it will be easy. It turned out to be too many clicks. I mean, it's probably a lot of you heard the website called toomanyclicks.com or toomanyclicks.net. But it becomes very popular. So anything you can put a click in it, people will try to do it. So I will ask Adam to share some of the experience in terms of looking at the screens and what this clicktronics actually turned out to be.
All right. So thank you, Yan, very much. One of the big joys of my job at Baylor is I'm often out at the units. I'm away from my desk much more than I'm at it. I get to interact with our frontline staff on a weekly basis. And so, I have a few examples that we found through some of those observations, but what I want to talk about is how we've kind of matured from, all right, let's look at these individual order set elements into let's look at the socio-technical system as a whole in terms of how we view our EHR. We've entered this era where staff just expect an EHR that's usable, that is going to support their workflow. We're past the time of, all right, these are new systems that are coming in, we have to get used to them. Everyone expects it to work. One of the most common things I hear when I'm out at the units with our nurses is, why doesn't this thing work like my iPad? And that's, for some reason the iPad is a standard for every every usability out there. But what I often reply is, well, Apple hasn't yet ventured into the electronic health record market, and so until they do, even if they can make it right, we mentioned here today, we have to kind of devise our own methods of going through and identifying these issues and proactively fixing them. So what I want to kind of show you is, one of the ways that healthcare systems are supposed to do that. Once you spend all this money to go live and implement these systems, what are you supposed to do in order to customize it to fit and fix some of these usability problems? So what I want to show you is a very quick video here, and I'll kind of walk you through some of the elements, and it may be a little bit grainier, it may not, but we are an Allscripts client, as you can see here. And so what we did was replicate one of the observations we saw from a nurse documenting on a post-op patient for a total knee replacement. And so one of the things to note is that we have all these individual data elements that are compiling this flow sheet. And what the nurse is required to do is, like you might expect, document on the actual surgical site, which is why the patient's actually on the unit, right? And so what you'll see is that she's clicking left lower extremity for the neurocognitive and perceptual aspect of this. And then, okay, well, that's great. Then she goes through the rest of her assessment, and then she gets to another spot, the neurovascular assessment. Oh, guess what she's clicking? Left lower extremity. Okay, and then she goes through the rest of these, and then you'll finally see towards the end of this video that in the musculoskeletal section, guess what she's clicking? Left lower extremity. Yeah, you got it, Chris. You figured it out. But the point is that, while we're building these individual data elements, they make sense. They go to different parts of the EHR. They each do different things. But when put into a clinical context and watched with the nurse observing all of this, it becomes incredibly painful. It just grinds everything to a halt. And so what makes sense to either the vendor, we did this to ourselves. This isn't an Allscripts thing. We said we're going to make a one-stop shop for all of our nurses to go to, and this is what we resulted with. And so while this is all beneficial, and you can kind of see that while this would be very painful, it may or may not have any patient safety repercussions. But what happens when it begins into the order set? What happens when the physician is going into ordering multiple code statuses? Okay, this is a side effect we found through the kind of evolution of reaching out to our physicians and learning from our frontline users. So here what happens is basically a physician is admitting a patient via an adult admit order set, the most commonly used order set we have across our system. They then, interact with it, order all the stuff they're supposed to do, select full code, is one of these you might expect for them to do. And then they enter up into the pneumonia order set, okay? But because we designed it differently, we had different people working on it, the code statuses appear in different orders on the different order set, okay? We even went so far as to say, well, we're going to make it incredibly useful and let them select their own defaults. They're going to be able to select their own preferences. That sometimes is beneficial, and it sometimes leads to the fact where you have someone ordering a full code status on one order set and a DNAR on another order set. What they then do is submit these simultaneously, and then you confuse the staff, right? And so what happens in these types of situations? And so moving forward, the way we begin to evolve all of this is saying, okay, well, how can we embed human factors and these principles into our own design efforts? And one of the best ways we've been able to do this is by functional testing, by saying, okay, if we have these informatics nurses who can kind of get at, is this the right verbiage, does it go to the right elements, but how do we expand upon that and begin listening to the users? And one of the big ways of doing that is through the user experience survey that Yan mentioned, also through actual observations on the units. Okay, and that's where I kind of come in, and one of the things I love best about this job. But our approach has been multifactorial, right? We've worked with our vendor to say, okay, these are issues we really, really need fixed, and these are issues that we hope you can fix for us. And they've said, okay, well, here's what's coming down the pike. Here's what you need to know about to adjust your own settings. More than that, we kind of had a mutual learning. We've approached other vendors, or not other vendors, don't get scared. We've approached other customers of our vendor and said, hey, how did you build this falls module? What did you do with these particular pressure ulcer issues? And then finally looked at our own internal resources and said, well, we've changed some policies of our own. Is Clicktronics beneficial? Is telling a nurse that she documented hourly rounding every hour, does that make her actually do it? Does it make her safer? Does it make our patients safer? No, it doesn't. And so we began to look at all these multifaceted approaches to kind of incorporate user-centric design into our actual EHR after we've gone live and spent all this money doing that. And so with that, I'll turn the rest of the time over back to Yan, who will talk about our journey and then kind of what the future holds for us.
Well, so you can see that there's no lack of challenges and problems. So where are the opportunities? So what we did is using the findings from our site visit or inspection, and basically to challenge our leaders and say, do you want to be smarter instead of 2 years later thinking, why we did this? So very clearly, that's very, nobody wants to show stupid now for 2 years thinking why we did this. Why was nurses use a scrub as mouse? So the idea of a checklist become a lot more relevant. So if we start off the process and say, here's checklist, before you go live, you have to do this, then they will say, well, I think we don't need that. So these wake-up calls are very important for any healthcare organization to see. If you don't think in advance, you don't, what's the word, pay me now, pay me later type of thing. So clearly they get it, and very soon the process of doing a pre-go live inspection to see if anything wording or otherwise was not correct. For hardware installation, for barcode medication, so there's sort of a simple checklist, what you need to do to get the system to be ready. And clearly that the style guides that become important instead of having everyone invent the new things, some basics that need to be covered. And we have had the fortunate connection with Judge and Muhammad, so they came over for the whole summer and did every week for 10 weeks to conduct a lecture for us, basically teach our EHR workforce, which is very helpful, and change our work process. So everybody know why we want to change the process, and they want to take the ownership of the user experience a bit more. So that's very much a positive journey for us. And recently we got also involved into sort of safety culture survey with our EHR team. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard any of the build team actually to understand what they're doing in the hospital has direct implication for patient safety. And just I was reminded a quote when a floor cleaning person in NASA was asked, what's your job? And then the guy says, launch the astronaut into space or land the moon. And how many of our EHR builders would have that sense of mission? So we sort of start a cultural change, and the survey was recently finished. So that's an important part of sort of improve user experience, that take that as a responsibility of every person in the organization. As opposed to say, well, we got a usability experience expert here, he's going to do the final check for us. I think we think that's probably not a sufficient process. And I wanted to loop back to the survey that we did as part of this project. So if you look at the user experience, not as a single static property, not as a sort of something they can do on a dime, you look at this as many components to it. So the system has to be very responsible, reliable. So we cannot blame 100% on vendors to say, hey, the system went down, it's your problem. Sometimes that organization owns the infrastructure. And we build new modules to it. What are the processes to make sure they're correct? And what are the ongoing integration options that we try to put in place? And what are policies? As Adam mentioned some of the policies. Sometimes efficiency of our EHR is not that great. We all agree with that. And in the next breath, we say, oh, let's document as much as possible. So those two are not consistent. So we try to learn ourselves to say, what are the limitations of how much you can ask people to document on EHR? Maybe we should not document that much. Maybe there's sort of wait until maybe in the future that's more efficient. So look at also the training part, how to get training part, and also support. Now we have in a transition to more proactive part of support. Before it's very reactive. You call the help desk, you get a ticket number, you wait. We try to implement a process to proactively run in with staff to see what the problem is. So I want to leave with you basically the simple message. After go live, that's probably the starting point of improving our user experience. So that's the message we have. Thank you very much.